買ってきたよ。
遅い。あと買ってきましただろ。
話した。
おい、お前これ半分食っただろ。こいつリスみたいな顔しやがって。
Let's see if we can help out our boy Kazuma over here. So I actually got this recipe from my boy Josh Weissman. If you want the link to his video for his Hokkaido bun recipe, it'll be down in the description below. First, we're going to make the tangzhong, which is essentially a Polish that you would use for sourdough, but for this, we're going to use 20 grams of all-purpose flour along with 60 grams worth of whole milk, as well as about 26 to 27 grams worth, I said 26 grams worth of water, Paul. Come on. Now take your mixture over to your stove and we're going to cook this over a medium-low heat until it starts to thicken. You almost are treating this like a roux. After about 30 to 40 seconds, it's actually going to start to gelatinize, and that's kind of the texture you want to look for. It's going to be a little bit gummy, but a little gelatinous, and then we actually have to cool this down because if it's too hot, you can't introduce it into your flour mixture later. I let mine cool over by the windowsill. Now while our tangzhong is resting and cooling down, we're going to get the rest of our mise en place ready for the dough. For this, we're going to need 320 grams worth of all-purpose flour, 3 grams worth of kosher salt, 60 grams worth of granulated sugar, followed by 1 whole egg and 1 egg yolk, which I didn't do here. In a separate bowl, we're going to get 120 grams worth of your whole milk, and I'm just going to nuke it in the microwave for just about 15 seconds to bring the temperature up to about 90 degrees. This is when we're going to add about 10 grams worth of our instant yeast. You don't want to have your milk too hot or you will kill the yeast. Go ahead and give this a good forking to incorporate everything, and then we're going to let this rest for about 10 minutes before we start actually working with it. The last bit is we're going to need 45 grams worth of room temperature softened butter. Cut these up into small chunks to incorporate later. Now while our yeast is waiting to be hydrated, I'm going to throw together a quick yakisoba sauce for later. For this, I'm going to use about 2 tablespoons worth of black vinegar, 2 tablespoons worth of soy sauce, and about 1 tablespoon worth of oyster sauce. Yes, we got a fresh bottle. And then please just have 2 tablespoons worth of ketchup. Give this a good forking to get it nice and incorporated, then just give it a taste because sometimes you do want to adjust the other flavors. For me, I wanted a little bit more sweetness, so I'm going to go ahead and add in just a bit more ketchup. Yes, I knew there was more in that bottle. And now that's done. We can set it aside. Okay, back to the bread. For this, we're going to be using a stand mixer with the dough hook attachment. This is super important for doing doughs like this. This dough is interesting to me because I've never worked with it before, but it seems similar to a straight dough or something like a brioche. But for this, we're going to take our tangzhong and add our milk with our yeast as well as our 1 whole egg and egg yolk that I didn't show you earlier. I do this to try to break up that tangzhong just so that way it incorporates a little bit better. Now we can add in all of our dry ingredients. We're going to let this go on about a low-medium speed until it starts incorporating. You don't really want to mess with it too much. It will start to eventually come together, but you do want to make sure that you periodically scrape down the sides of this bowl. It doesn't have a tremendous amount of liquid in it, so it does need help from time to time. After about 4 to 5 minutes, I continued to mix this thing, and I ended up having to use my hands just to incorporate some of the flour on the bottom because my dough hook wasn't quite grabbing everything. After everything was fully incorporated, I started adding in my butter once the dough was a little bit shaggy, and that means it wasn't fully hydrated quite yet, and you want to do this so that way the butter can start incorporating itself very easily into the dough. Butter is an interruptant, so it can interrupt the process of the dough. I would periodically pull a little bit out and try to get a window effect, and this is where you pull it and stretch it and try to see through the dough, and if it's at that stage, it is done. However, since it's a little bit colder in my house, I had to crank this up to a higher speed to start warming up that butter to fully incorporate it. Once it's nice and shiny and your dough reaches about 90 degrees, it's ready to go. Get a bowl nice and greased, and I actually booled this with my hands, but you can do this on the table as well. I'm basically just tucking the bottom back into the middle to constantly build that ball shape. Once you have a nice shape, pinch the bottom of the dough to seal it and then press it down into your bowl. Grab yourself a clean wet towel and drape it over the top of it. We need to let this dough rest for about 1 to 1.5 hours to double in size. That's a nice dough. As you can see, I had to use my wok to actually cover this thing because it started getting pretty big, but go ahead and give this a nice punch down. Get yourself a floured surface. Don't hit it too hard with a bunch of flour. We just need a little bit so it doesn't stick. I weighed this out to 680 grams. And since I wanted about 130 grams per piece of dough, I wanted to make sure that I had an equal amount for each. Scale out each piece to that 130 gram mark and distribute any leftover pieces to the rest of your dough. It doesn't have to be 100% accurate here. Now to roll these in the hot dog shape, you're going to kind of flatten it out just a little bit, and then you're going to tuck in the top two corners towards the middle, gently press down and start pressing the dough away from you to try to make a cylindrical shape. This is honestly one of the harder techniques I had to try to learn while I was at the bakery. It took me quite a while to learn this press method to get these really nice tight pieces of dough so that way we could use them for hot dog buns or sandwich rolls or whatever the case was. You could do the little rolly snake method that a lot of people like, but I don't feel like it makes a tight enough dough for what we need. If your dough isn't tight enough and you go to sauce it, it can saturate the bread because it has too many air pockets. Now once you have your nice hot dog buns rolled out, we're going to go ahead and get 1 egg and just a touch of milk ready for our egg wash. And I don't know why I don't own a brush. I note to self, go buy a brush, but you can use a paper towel in the same way. Grab yourself a paper towel, dip it into your egg wash, and brush all of the dough. It's super important you do this before you proof them again, because if you go to egg wash when they're proofed, you have a chance of really tearing the dough. Grab yourself something to cover this with. I'm just using a cake box because it's what I have. Now we do have to let these rest and proof for an additional hour to hour and a half, just depending on your environment. It's a little bit cold today, so probably hour and a half mark. In the meantime, go ahead and throw together all of your stuff for your yakisoba, or in my case, I'm gonna go work out so I can eat this somewhat guilt-free. Now for your yakisoba mise en place. This is pretty easy and pretty straightforward. You can use whatever vegetables you want, but for this, I'm gonna be using a little bit of carrot, bell pepper, and cabbage. We're going to cut all of our vegetables about the same size if we can, so we're going to go ahead and cut these all into essentially a julienne, which is basically a matchstick size. The reason why you want this is so that way it'll lay out easily into your yakisoba bread. If you have them as a small dice or anything like that, you're actually going to have a harder time laying this into the bread. The one vegetable that doesn't really matter how you cut is the cabbage, because it will cook and wilt better than the harder vegetables. So for this, we are just doing a medium-sized dice because, again, it's going to cook out a lot of that moisture versus the bell peppers and the carrots. Get all this into your bowl because we can just cook all this together. We're going to need a much bigger bowl. I don't know why I always prep so much, but give this a good toss to get everything fully incorporated. And we have to have some green onions or scallions in this. This is totally optional, but I love the flavor behind it, so add in whatever you want at this point. It's your yakisoba. Just finished our workout, and it's been about an hour on these buns, but it did end up warming up in the house just a little bit, so I do want to take a look at them and kind of see how they look. They should be ready at this point. It's gonna be good. These look perfect. They've more than doubled in size. But what I'm going to do is, I actually don't want them to bake into each other so much, so I'm going to be very gentle and try to remove them from each other, kind of separate them a little bit. They're eventually going to bake into each other, which is fine. We can just cut them afterwards, but these are ready to go. We're going to throw these into an oven at 350 degrees for about 20 to 25 minutes. And with some YouTube magic, pop those bad boys in your oven at 350 degrees, and after 20 to 25 minutes, look at these golden, beautiful boys. They baked into each other just a little bit, but it's not going to make a huge difference for this since they weren't baked too hard. I don't like this one, so we're just going to eat it. Best practice is to get the bread off of the tray it was on so that way it can cool down properly. Use a wire rack or whatever you have to just make sure they get cooled down. And then do your happy dance. Let's see what the inside looks like. Oh my god, I'm so excited. Hold on. Oh, look at that crumb. Oh, that's beautiful. Oh my god. Now to make the filling while the bread is cooling. For this, I'm going to use about 4 to 5 ounces worth of ground pork. Feel free to use chicken or beef or leave it out entirely. I'm going to throw in 2 handfuls of my vegetable. Again, this is total preference to you guys, but I'm making quite a bit, so the waifu and I can both have some. I spice this up with a little bit of togarashi for a little bit of spice and heat behind it, and then continue to saute this up until all of the vegetables have kind of softened up and wilted just a little bit. Make sure you don't overcrowd your pan, so that way when we pop our yakisoba noodles in it, we do have room to completely stir fry the rest of this together. Once everything is tossed really well together, go ahead and add in half of your yakisoba sauce, so this way we can add more when we put it onto our bread. Get everything nice and happy together, we're good. Take your 2 favorite pieces of bread and slice these down the middle and only about halfway through so you don't cut all the way to the bottom. You want to make sure you do this so that way it doesn't leak through the bottom when you go ahead and assemble it. I like to rub mine with just a little bit of room temperature butter and then stuff your bun, that sounded really bad, with as much yakisoba as you possibly can. This is definitely a carb explosion, and we're going to go ahead and top off our carb explosion with a little bit more yakisoba sauce, and that's why we saved a little bit from earlier. Top this with a little bit of fresh green onion and a little bit of pickled ginger, and we finally have our beautiful yakisoba pan that Aqua ate. Oh my god, it's going everywhere. And there it is, guys, our yakisoba pan. We have a little spicy for Megumin, we have a little saucy for Aqua, and we have a little buttery for Darkness. And now I did buy another yakisoba pan from a local eatery just to kind of compare the two. I don't think it'll be fair, but we'll give it a shot. This is the one that I bought locally. I'm not going to show you where it's from just because, but this was only $3.50, so I will give them that. There isn't any pork or anything in this. It's just the yakisoba, the bread, a little bit of pickled ginger, some lettuce, and I think there's some butter on the bread, but that's really about it. I mean, the bread is still pretty nice. It has nice pockets, has nice color. I mean, what are you gonna expect for $3? I mean, it was $3. Just gonna move that over there now. Now look at the filling on this one compared to that. The bread is just so much softer. I mean, granted, it's completely fresh bread, but I mean, oh my god. Oh my god, that's so good. It's like eating a cloud topped with yakisoba. This is fantastic. You almost don't have to chew the bread. It's that soft. This is one of those where you black out and the sandwich is gone moments. Have you ever had anything like yakisoba pan? I've never made it before, but this is awesome. My name is Chef PK, here on Foodie Friday, bringing anime and video game food to life. Get subscribed, and remember, keep playing with your food. Just gonna go black out real quick.
With the speech till they caught up in the rapture. I'm so out of line with the phrase game. Let's take a break, been a long day.